Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna say.
Okay, everybody, it's time for another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. From Chicago, I'm Michael James, and this is number 144 during the time of the pandemic. It is for the week of March 18th. We are recording it on the 15th. And today I'm going to be joined by my pal, sometimes a host, sometimes a producer. He's certainly on the board, Thom Clark. And then we're going to have Amisha Patel from the Brandon Johnson campaign and Leni Manaa-Hoppenworth, who is in a runoff for the alderperson position in the 48th Ward. So stay tuned here for the next hour, however you're getting it, on radio, on YouTube, on Spotify or Google Podcast or CAN TV. We're glad you're here joining us. So we welcome all you friends, your neighbors, your comrades, your citizens of the world, and on your mark, get set, go. One of the best things that happened to me this week was that I'm over the COVID, I'm back in the pool, and I had a photo exhibit opening on Friday night at the Yuri Eichen Gallery. I'll keep mentioning that for the next month or so, because you can go to the closing, which is on April 7th, a Friday night, or you can actually make an appointment and go in there all by yourself and check it out at your leisure. So I've got Thom Clark here. Thom is a trusty buddy who helps me out when I need him, and I try to help him out too. And he is going to tell us a little bit about one of his favorite activities, being a senior, no longer with a stroller, but hanging out with his grandson. So good morning to you. Good afternoon to you, Thom.
It's good to see you, Michael, and great guests you have coming up. Those will be great conversations with important political activists. We have an opportunity coming up next week on the first day of spring, March 21st. A bunch of elders are going to march with strollers around Chase Bank because they're spending too much money on big oil. Plain and simple. We have probably over 70% of the deposits at big banks like Wells Fargo and Chase. And they've made commitments in the past to follow the Paris Peace Accord, climate change controls, but they haven't kept their promises. Over the last 5 years, something like $1.2 trillion in loans. I mean, I'm a small depositor. I've been there 30 years, and I'm tired of my money being used this way. So we're going to go out because we want our next generation to have some of the earth left. And if we keep drilling and drilling, like President Biden agreed to do this past week up in Alaska, if not now, when are we going to stop this craziness? I mean, it's remarkable to me how quickly we seem to be moving to electric or hybrid cars, just to show one example about how we can change. Yeah. But, the big investments are still going to big oil to drill. And as far as I'm concerned, we got to keep it in the ground. March 21st, 11 a.m., Chase Bank, 10 South Dearborn. The more the merrier. We're going to have a lot of fun with banners and chants, and we hope some music. We'll see what happens. But the main image is
I'll see.
Grandma and Grandpa with strollers, hoping that our grandkids will be able to celebrate Mother Earth.
Well, I like this. I like that the older people are being called to action. And you called it something in your promotion. It's not like third wave, but the third act.
Third act. So this is the Illinois chapter. Third Act is sponsoring over 90 of these actions around the country on March 21st, first day of spring. And they're all targeting in their respective communities the four big banks that finance big oil to the largest extent. In Chicago, we're targeting Chase, and we're actually going to have postcards people can fill out to send in to Jimmy Dimon, the CEO of Chase, to say, change your lending policies. It's time to stop drilling. Let's invest in the future. As my wife says, I'm going to blow her great slogan that she'll be using, but we want to fund the future, not fossils.
I like it. And I like the idea of seniors being called to action. I know there's an awful lot of us seniors. In fact, a lot of guests on the show, not necessarily today, but our older folks have been around. And I won't have a stroller because my grandkids are either bigger and hopefully there'll be more to come. And your grandkid is too big for a stroller, but we're allowed to go anyhow, right?
We are indeed. And in fact, the more the merrier, because we have some banners and posters and signs and maybe even a few more ambassadors to pass out some information. But we're looking to mostly have a good time and a good crowd. We expect dozens of elders from the Third Act group alone, but we've already heard about other people who want to join in. There are about 12 sponsoring organizations. I don't have the list in front of me, but it's a wide range of organizations, not your usual suspects, but Sierra Club's been helping us out, a couple of different faith-based groups. It's quite an amazing coalition of elders and others who want to change the way Chase practices its lending. And
Well, I like it.
there are better ways to make money than drilling out more oil.
I don't get to go to the bank very often since you can just sign a check now and deposit it. But, I have planned to go by Walgreens and give them a piece of my mind.
Yeah, that's another one.
Stuff, and I will stop at the Chase Bank and give them a little piece of my mind. I'm going to go down a list here pretty quickly because we got people who are active out there trying to get people elected. And so I'm just going to go down it. If you want to chime in during this banter, Tom, just jump in or just give me the signal. First off, I'm going to say Israel remains in turmoil. It's a sad shift. They're trying to limit the role of the Supreme Court over there. Netanyahu has had to make coalition with some extreme right-wing parties to keep his seat. And it's a sad shift from their democratic aspirations to really a state of apartheid.
I have a 50-year perspective on this. I volunteered on a kibbutz 3 years after the Six-Day War. The aspirations of that young country at the time were pretty phenomenal, given everything else going on in the Middle East. And amazingly enough, oil again comes into the picture. And so here it is 50 years later, we're still fighting the friggin' same battle. And in this case, we see an aspiring democracy turning into an apartheid state. It's really sad. It's just a terrible time for Palestinians who've not had it so good the last couple of decades. The last couple of months have just been terrible. And promises made, not kept, is more and more the case with both the current leadership. It's not where the country's at, but one of the last bastions for constitutional law, the Supreme Court, is being undercut by this new far right-wing coalition that's running the so-called government. They really are much more an authoritarian state.
I'm going to try and be like the guys, if you've ever watched the sports show, Pardon the Interruption, where they have a limited amount of time and they cover a whole lot of stuff really quick. So here I go. Voting in Chicago. Remember, and we're going to talk about this later in the show, we have a mayoral race that is going to take place on April 4th. It's really important to become engaged. Only 38% of people turned out in the first election. Hopefully we'll do better. On the aldermanic races, there's a lot of runoffs. In the 30th Ward, Jessica Gutierrez is up against Ruth Cruz. In the 43rd Ward, Timmy Knutson is versus Brian Comer. In the 45th Ward, Jim Gardner is he's up against Megan Mathias. I think we're probably for Mathias in that one.
Yes, we are.
In the 46th Ward, Angela Clay versus Kim Walsh. Angela was a guest on the show way back 4 years ago or whatever, and hopefully we'll get her again. And in the 48th Ward, and we'll have her on the show later, Leni Manaa-Hoppenworth versus Joe Dunn. Over in Wisconsin, I got an email from the governor, and he said he's never emailed before, but it's an urgent matter. It's the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, also on the 4th, and it will decide a lot of things, not only in Wisconsin, but how perhaps the 2024 election goes. The person we're rooting for up there is Janet Protasowicz, and she is a Democrat, and if she wins, and she did do well in the primary, that will be good. On the abortion...
There's a postcard campaign that people can easily participate in. You know how to contact me if you want to know more.
And your email is thomnewstips@gmail.com.
Correct.
Right on. Okay, moving right along. On the abortion pill, there's a lot of news out there about it, but I was reading the Texas Monthly. Their headline is how a right-wing law firm shaped the judge who will rule on the abortion pill. And before Donald Trump appointed Matthew Cazz-Maryc, he was appointed a federal judge. He cut his teeth on the first Liberty Institute, a religious liberty practice with Texas roots. He's always been against abortion, and he, in his confirmation hearings, he came out against same-sex marriage, and he also came out against trans people. And
in other words, a typical Trump judge.
Yeah, one of those kind of guys.
This is part of the legacy of the former president, whose name I don't particularly want to mention, but we're going to be living with it for years.
Yeah, it's problematic. You already mentioned the oil drilling in Alaska, where the Biden, who's probably shifting to the center a little bit in order to get ready for his re-election campaign. He's blaming it on Trump. He has scaled it back a little, but they're still going to do some drilling in a pristine area of Alaska. Not a good thing.
Keep it in the ground. Keep it in the ground.
Keep it in the ground. On labor front, we've talked about it a lot over the last few weeks. I'm just going to say that workers are out today, and we're recording on the 15th in France and Great Britain, and certainly around the country in the United States. On our sports front, we have a wonderful opportunity to watch baseball right now with the
World Baseball Classic.
World Baseball Classic.
Let me just say, with the NCAA happening in the Big Ten tournament, the workers at the United Center got a contract approval from Levy, and it's actually a pretty big victory.
That is. I knew they were out there protesting, and we will see Northwestern and Illinois in the March Madness. We'll see for how long. The Bulls have actually picked it up, and we hope they'll win tonight. Opening day is the 30th. The Cubs are at home. The Sox are in Houston. And last week we had Maryland Cats talking about the women's movement in general. And we had Robin Gable, a congresswoman who's now head of the Democratic caucus in the state legislature. And they were both on, and you can go to youtube.com/heartlandmedia/videos, and you can hear what they had to say, because both of them had good things to say. Thom, thanks for joining me. I'll have you back in another week or two, and we'll have you do another roundup of things going on that you think are worthy of sharing. How about it? You accept that
Very
invitation?
good. And wish Miss Patel my best. Leni's going to have an interesting effort in 48. It's pretty exciting.
Hal, you're going to give us a little music, and we'll be right back with our first guest. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial to the Live from the Heartland show.
Though the road be dark and dreary, the pathway burning and dry, dim light barely leading us on, girl, we can make it if we try. Though winds may rage and storms may blow, discouragement at each dead end, no guiding light to lead us forward, no helping hand from a friend. We can make it, pretty baby, we can make it if we try. We can make it, sweet darling, we can make it if we try. If you love me like you say you do, you've got to take a better hold. 'Cause it takes lots of determination, girl, from your heart, mind, and soul. And don't let nobody steer our course, 'cause I know this one will always try. And if we feel like the world is against us, girl, we've got to look into each other's eyes. Tell us if we can make it. We can make it. We can make it, sweet darling. We can make it if we try. We can make it, baby. We can make it if we try. We got to make it. Don't listen to nobody.
Okay, welcome back to more Live from the Heartland for the week of the 18th of March. And I'm really honored now to bring on someone who is involved in trying to elect Brandon Johnson, our next mayor, and that would be Amisha Patel of the Brandon Johnson campaign. Good afternoon to you, Amisha.
Hey, good afternoon. Glad to be here.
I'm really glad to have you. Why don't you tell us a brief bit about yourself and your role in the campaign?
Sure. So I'm a longtime community and labor organizer. I've been working in Chicago for over 20 years, um, doing organizing workers into unions, and then leading the Grassroots Collaborative, which is a community labor coalition. I left my job at the end of last year, which was quite a big thing to do, but it was time for me to think about a different role, and it's been really great and wonderful to get to put time into electing Brandon as our next mayor of Chicago. So for the campaign, the work that I do, I have worked on helping put together most of his policy platforms that you see on his website, convening people who, I'm not an expert on everything, but I know people who are. And so pulling together the advocates and specialists on a range of issues that help really draft much of his platforms. And currently I'm playing the role of director of community outreach, as well as, trying to think about what happens next right after April 5th and beyond. So that's also really fun to get to do.
Well, I'm going to save that what happens next to later in the interview. Uh, Amisha Patel, tell us a little bit about Brandon Johnson and the roots of this campaign.
Sure. So Brandon Johnson is a public school teacher who eventually decided to continue to organize as staff of Chicago Teachers Union. I think that's when I first met him, so maybe about 15 years ago, and getting to work on really critical issues like getting an elected representative school board, or fighting, to make sure that we passed the fair tax amendment, a range of different issues that we've gotten to work on side by side. Since 2018, he's also been my Cook County commissioner. So that's also really lovely to get to see and connect with him in that way, and to see him fight for, for many different pieces to make sure that folks have equal and full access to housing, right? That don't have their records used against them, and being able to secure quality housing, being able to, his work to prioritize, communities of color and Black people specifically with his budget for Black lives. So getting to see him, sort of be part of serving the community, from whether it was for his time as a public school teacher to his time as an elected official, and really through all of it, him bringing his sensibility as an organizer, which to me is actually is what's most exciting about Mayor Brandon Johnson, is that we really have someone rooted in organizing, rooted in community, who's on the fifth floor, which has been many decades since that's been the case. So very exciting moments.
No, that's good to hear. Okay, he's running against a guy who's far more conservative and kind of, whether he intends it or not, I think he probably does, is a little bit of a great white hope kind of candidate. That would be Paul Vallis, who I like to share that he has pretty much failed everywhere he's gone, running school boards, et cetera. And he appears to, why he's running for mayor, I don't know, but he didn't do well the last time he tried it. How does the campaign look to you? How does, some people said right on it was probably the opposition's to lose. It seems like Brandon is picking up steam. What's your sense of the campaign, and how do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, I think as an organizer, I'll say there have been so many campaigns that I've started off on, and people are like, "That's impossible. You're not going to get it." I remember, I will not name him, but a prominent journalist. We were on a panel together, and I was talking about the Fight for 15 at the early days of it, and coming out of the TV station, he was like, not going to happen, like this is, it's like, I get it, you're going to like call for it, but it's never going to happen. So anyway, I feel like this is again, once again, the case here with Brandon. When he first, ran, he was, a lot of people didn't know him, and so expected very little about his ability to make it here, right? Including Mayor Lightfoot as well, right? Who just a few weeks ago said there's no way we're going to have, a Mayor Johnson. And I think what we have known is like that actually that the challenge was just that people getting to know Brandon and getting to listen to him, but that if they actually had that opportunity, they'd be with him. That what his values are, what his beliefs are, and what his record is all rooted in community, all rooted in Chicago and what neighborhoods across the city are looking for. So we've really seen that to be true. We've had an incredible field operation that has, reached certainly not every corner of the city, but it's been a massive force that's only growing. The number of volunteers have exploded since he made the runoff. And then, of course, some good funding from primarily labor unions, right? People who are with working people and working families every single day to get him on air. And so, where do I think we're at now? I think we're on track to win, and it's going to be really tough. Like there's no slam dunks in this race. It's an epic battle. I think reminiscent certainly of Harold Washington, his first fight in, and like it feels very much like, you can see the kind of corporate powers coalescing. Private equity is Paul Vallis's primary funder. If you look at who's pouring money into him, it is big business. It is the financial industry. It is folks who support police, mass policing and criminalization. It is folks who have very homophobic viewpoints and are very, affiliated with right-wing politics. And there's a lot of money when you talk about that group of people, right? In terms of our opposition, and so that's the battle, right? Is like, can we, raise enough funds, continue to raise enough funds to really compete, which I think we can, and we're doing that. And how do we have those conversations, right, across door to door, across the city to talk about who Brandon is, and we know when we have them, people are with us immediately. So we're really excited, and we need every single vote. People who are sitting on the sidelines is going to be just sort of leave more power in the hands of the opposition. So we've got to make sure folks come out.
Well, we had a lot of younger people sort of came around for Brandon. I confess to have been a Chewy supporter from the old, you can go way back with Chewy. And I'm very fond of him, but I don't think he ran a very good campaign. And I also think that Brandon picked up a lot of steam, particularly from young people. I know in my own family, 2 of my 3 kids in Chicago came out for Brandon. What's your take on how much energy the youth have, and in just the whole notion of turning out people? What are you doing about that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, looking at the vote totals, we know we really want to increase the number of young people voting, and how hard that is on a runoff election, right? Like for people to even know there's one more election still. You've got to come out again. It's not over. So, I mean, I think what we're really trying to do is animate people, right? Because that's the key. Is like, and Brandon's vision is, I think, our key. Our big power in animating voters and young people in particular. So we've got efforts to organize students. We've got more capacity this time than we did. It definitely was like a very small, nimble team. I was a volunteer, just volunteering 20 hours a week to try to like help make things go. And so we've got a little bit more of a team now, which is great. It continues to grow. And so we've got student-based organizing at a different level than before the runoff, which is really exciting. Really trying to figure out how to keep engaging folks who work with young people to be able to, especially like newly 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds, right, whose first election this might be, and to really, again, have Brandon, like the big thing I think is getting people to hear from him in some way or the other, right? And that's because we know that young people, when they hear him, he knows how to speak to young people, he knows how to engage young people, and that's really going to be key to April 4th.
Amisha Patel, I want to share with you, you probably know that Maria Haddon in the 49th Ward turned her campaign office into a Brandon office. And anyone wants to pick up a sign, you go to Morse and Greenview, and there are plenty of them to have. They got a new shipment in. What do you think is the main difference between the 2 candidates? What is the one thing? I mean, there's a lot of stuff about the police coming on, and we know that the kind of neo-Nazi, I hate to say it, but he apparently is the Katzenzara of the Fraternal Order of the Police. He's come out for the opposition candidate. So there's a lot of stuff, and Brandon seems to have modified his position on the police a little bit. What do you think is the biggest issue, or do you want to address the police issue?
I mean, I think so. Brandon, so we'll talk about public safety first. I mean, I think that the message that he and the campaign is trying to put out is really separate policing from public safety, right? Like police equals public safety is the dominant narrative. So the only questions that people want to ask Brandon is like police, police, police. And I think having the broader question about, well, let's first talk about if we want to address crime, let's talk about prevention first, right? And not just like, policing is an after the fact thing. It's not a preventive solution by any means. And I think that and I think he's done a really good job of lifting that up. And of course they want to be able to get to the kind of punchline of, trying to get Brandon to say, well, what about police? Are you going to have more of them or less of them, right? And where do you stand on it? And I think the reality of what we've got to do as organizers, but certainly also Brandon, but as organizers, what we need to do is continue to have those conversations about what is actually public safety, which is not a soundbite, right? Like more police is a soundbite, and it's a thing that like people can say over and over and are seldom questioned about, well, one, how are you going to get more police? Two, how does that equal more safe, greater safety? But we know the burden is much more on someone who has a much bigger vision of public safety and policing. And so, so I think that we want, like, his values are really clear, and how does he get to enacting those values is going to take some time. It's not going to be an overnight thing in the administration once he's in office. But I think that that's the challenge that he's in, is that like that's the position that people want to put him into. But I think that we're really clear about his what actually needs to happen to make Chicago safer, and that is about greater investments in education, in after-school programs, in job and youth employment. That's when we talk, let's get into the details about that. Would love to hear Paul Vallis talk about, well, how do you prevent crime? What are you going to do to make sure that our communities are resourced? And, to get to your point of the difference, I think this leads quite smoothly into the biggest difference between the two, is that Brandon is rooted in people and community, and has lived his whole life centering community and people. And Paul Vallis has lived his life really butchering people and communities in terms of cuts, right? Cuts to programs, cuts to service, privatization, really trying to shrink government, shrink what public safety net of people. And I think Brandon's really rooted in expanding public services, expanding, right? Not just even holding the line, but let's actually talk about the world that we want. And that vision of the world that we want is completely different between Vallis and Johnson.
Well, it's very true. And we saw a situation where we had 9 candidates running for mayor, and we had, I think, 7 of them were African American. Brandon, didn't carry any awards. I think he got 40% in some, but it's a different game now. And I'm just wondering if you think there'll be any endorsements coming from, well, the current mayor or from Chuy Garcia. I mean, I'm putting the word out as best I can that Chuy should come out and endorse him. I think it would be good for the movement as a whole. What's your take on that? We did see Jesse White, who, was a neat guy for many years in some ways, kind of ran the motor vehicles, et cetera. And all of a sudden he comes out with a lot of ads, and you pointed out the big money behind Vallis. But Jesse White and Burnett both came out, as well as Willie Wilson. What do we got? What do you think about the chances of endorsement by Chuy, et cetera, et cetera? What do you got to tell me?
I think the chances are really high. I'm really confident about a few different candidates who ran for mayor coming out to endorse Brandon shortly. So lots of conversations are in the works. I wish I could announce something today, but I can't. But I can say very clearly that we're very confident about some upcoming endorsements. For folks like, Chuy has been such a leader for decades in this work, in this fight. And, the primary was ugly. was ugly on our side of, like in the fight to to get to the runoff. It's not how I would have wanted it to go at all, and it left, I think, a lot of fractures that I think we're prioritizing very hard. Many folks are working to try to heal those fractures, right, and to move forward together. I think that this is a hard, as an organizer, I think I'm very much trained, and many of us are trained as it's us versus them. It's it's like the good guys, the bad guys. And I think too much of it, we fell into a lot of that, during the last set of months, it was not okay. And so I do think there's a lot of learning for how do we move forward together. And how do we do this in a way that actually brings us together instead of fracturing us? And I have to say, there were a lot of things, I think, on both camps that were not, as someone watching it, not in control of things, but boy, or not how we should have done it. And I think there's some good work to heal that. And I'm hopeful of where we go, how we go forward.
Hey, spoiler alert. When we talk about endorsements and we can't get the word out of our guest, we know who Chuy Garcia is endorsing, and it's Brandon Johnson. Back to the show. Enjoy. Well, I'm really glad to hear that. And I do want to point out that 36 members of the newly elected police district councils have come out for Brandon. And I'm sure there will be more. I'm not sure how those all races fell, progressive, non-progressive, but certainly a lot of good people were elected to that. We're going to run out of time because you have another meeting and we have another guest. I really appreciate you, Amisha Patel, for coming on. Do you want to give us any little parting shot of enthusiasm and eager and go forth into the world to make it a better place? Because Chicago is really a progressive town. We've got a lot of progressive people in the city council. There'll be more. Whoever is going to be the mayor is going to have to deal with that. And, we've come a long way since the days of the first daily, and we don't want to lose that.
Absolutely. I'm just, anytime anyone asks me how I'm doing, the answer is I'm amazing, because this moment is amazing. There's so much possibility in front of us that we just in my lifetime have not in my lifetime. I was 8 with when Harold Washington in 1983, but I
was there.
But it's been a long time. And I think this moment has, huge significance, of course, for Chicago, definitely also for national significance, right? For where the Democratic Party goes, how we actually go on the offense and fight for what we need, how we show what's possible. If we actually prioritize working people and working families. And I'm so excited. And I think really for everyone listening, it is about how we move forward together. Please volunteer to phone bank, to door knock, to canvas. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, get them out. That's going to be the biggest thing, because we know that Vallis supporters, and where his votes came from, are going to come out again. And we've really got to make sure that all of our folks know about Brandon, know who he is, know where he comes from, and that he's really is going to be, it's a different kind of accountability than we've seen in quite some time. And we're going to hold him accountable, right? There's lots of lessons from Obama, right? We've got to continue to push hard on the left and push for what we want. And we'll do that, but we've got to first get him elected. So really all hands on deck, and I'm really excited to get a chance to talk with you about him today.
April 4th. Okay. And you can vote now. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. Amisha
March 20th. Early voting starts March 20th. So get it in. Yeah.
All right. Amisha Patel, I look forward to meeting you in person. I've heard great things about you, and you keep up the good work, and we'll do what we can.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial, or however you're getting the show. We're on CAN TV. We're on youtube.com/Heartland Media. We're on Google and Spotify podcasts. But you spread this interview around, and I'll get you a copy of just your interview without the whole show if you want to send it to your friends. Okay, we'll be right back. Hal, our engineer, my son, going to play us a little music, and we'll be right back with our next guest, Leni Manaa-Hoppenworth, who is running for alderwoman in the 48th Ward. Right back.
You're trying to get sweated, you're still never ready. Burning the lights, sweated, radically poetic. Standing with the fury that they had in 66. And like you double a man, stoning deep in the system shit. He was a body remover. I'll give you a dose, but it can never come close to a ray. Built up inside of me.
Okay, we're back with more Live from the Heartland for the week of March 18th, and it gives me great pleasure to bring on someone who I haven't seen in about 7 years, but was a guest on this show way back. That would be the one, the only Leni Manaa-Hoppenworth. And she is running in a runoff for the aldermanic position of the 48th Ward, which is the ward to the south of the beloved 49th, where the show originates. So good afternoon to you, Leni.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for for having me here. I'm excited to talk to you today and to be such a great neighbor to you in the 48th Ward. As you might know, Maria Haddon, Alderwoman of the 49th Ward, recently endorsed me.
I
Very,
wouldn't
very
have
close to
expected
you.
her to do anything but. She's a great alderwoman, and I'm sure she would love to have you by her side over there in the city council. It looks like there's going to be a lot of good people in the council, and you certainly have a good shot. How does it look to you right now, your race?
It looks great. Every day, every morning I go out and I talk to voters. I love walking around and seeing mothers. Like today, I walked through my neighborhood and someone stopped me and said, Leni, and they were with, the mother was with their two kids. Leni, no matter what happens in this race, I really want you to come and talk to my daughter's Girl Scout troops because they would be very interested to learn what made you want to run for office and why it matters. Because there's a democracy badge that they can earn, and so you can help them earn their badge.
Well, what did make you decide to run to office? How did you come to this position, and who influenced you? I mean, how did it come about?
Yeah, so like a lot of you heard, many people in city council decided to retire, run for other offices. And in the 48th Ward, my alderperson, Harry Osterman, decided to retire. So he announced, and that day I got so many calls from people in the neighborhood, friends, community leaders, business owners, local business owners, and Chamber of Commerce members, mothers who wanted to know if I wanted to run for office. And so I sat my family down at the dinner table because I said, hey, I'm thinking about running for office. And they said, yeah, Mom. And then I sat them down at the dinner table and I said, look, if I run for office, we will not be able to get off that roller coaster until it ends. So
Which could be years away.
yes, or many elections away. So so I'm going to get on this roller coaster and I explained to them why I wanted to do it. I want to do what I'm already doing, which is being a good neighbor, being a good community member, caring for each other, doing things for our local public schools, doing things as a local business owner alongside the Chamber of Commerce to make Andersonville the coolest neighborhood to live in Chicago and in this planet, and organizing coalitions to do amazing things like with the Women's March and Indivisible. So I and working with our local elected officials at the local, state, and federal levels to pass good policies that help us all. So I want to do that as an elected official. And my daughter, who's now a freshman at Northwestern, who was waitressing several summers down the street at Svea, went to her room and she came back with 2 envelopes of cash and she put it on the table and she said, I want to be your first donor. Go for it.
Well, that's good. And we liked Harry. I don't think he was as progressive as we always kind of pushed him to be, but he was certainly a nice guy. And the 48th Ward is something special for many years. It's a lot of stuff. I'm a big fan of Scout over there, who has my photographs. If you're in there, tell Larry he better vote for you, and I'll come over and tell him too. How about telling our listeners, our viewers, a little bit about the 48th Ward?
So the 48th Ward, luckily for the 48th Ward, we're surrounded by amazing alder people. To the north, we have Maria Haddon. To the west, we have Andre Vasquez, actually right across the street from me, because Andersonville is split between the 48th Ward and the 40th Ward.
Aha.
Yes. And then Matt Martin to the south of us. And it is one, and we're right on the lakefront. We're one of the most diverse and dense wards in Chicago. And I know from experience, one of the most progressive, it seems. I was an organizer for the Women's March from Illinois to DC and back. And many people who jumped on buses with me, the 10,000 who came from Illinois, many of them came from this area. I worked at the Chicago Reader also on the publishing side, and many people who read the Chicago Reader live in this ward. And so I also am the co-founder of Indivisible IL9 and 9, the Congressional District, 9th District, and also Indivisible Illinois. And many people who came to our events came from this ward. So we also have amazing neighborhood public schools, and we have about more than 40 languages spoken in our grade schools and high schools. We have Uptown, Edgewater, and Andersonville. And in Uptown, we have Asia on Argyle, which is a historic district in itself, along with the Bryn Mawr Historic District, which is where my campaign, Edgewater campaign office is right now at 1129 West Bryn Mawr. So please stop by at any time. We're right by the red line here on Bryn Mawr. So this is a very, we vote, we turn out the vote, we vote by mail. We're very inclusive. We have one of the largest LGBTQ populations in this ward. I am a queer woman of color, and I've talked to so many who have come from California, of all places, and LA in particular, in the past 2 weeks, who have said, Leni, I moved here, and it's because I feel politically safe here. And I want to say we have a mix of economic range, including people who rent, like myself. I rent my apartment, which my kids were all born and raised here. And I also rent my small business here in Andersonville. And
which
we have
is
people,
a dance studio, right?
which is a dance store. So Michael, we have dance things like shoes, ballet slippers, and tights and leotards, but we also have my friends Rod and Melanie and Jenny. They teach tango on Monday nights at 8:00. So come and dance tango with me at 8:00 on Mondays. And seriously, Michael, I think that if I could teach everyone tango, I think this world would be a much better place. So we can have a whole nother conversation about how that.
I've got an album of all kind of tango music from Argentina, I think, where my daughter had gone to school one summer. I remember Argyle. You live in some neat, you've mentioned some neat neighborhoods. I remember when Argyle was still a lot of country and Western bars back in the old days, late 60s. Things do change, and a lot of times they change for the better. Now, let me ask you a question. You are running against a guy who other people have told me is a pretty good guy. I think probably Harry did support him. His last name is Dunn. What are the differences between you and Mr. Dunn? And why would people want to vote for you?
Well, what I'm hearing every day from voters on the street is that they are so excited to support somebody who has deep roots in the community, someone who's an advocate for our public schools, who value local small businesses and vibrant corridors, and somebody who's been working with people in coalition with groups and individuals and elected officials, not only at the local levels, but at the state and the national levels, to make this world a better place for all. So I have been talking to voters every day, and what they want, what they tell me at the doors, at the train stations, on the sidewalks, on the way to school, is that they want someone like me, who is an independent person, who can get things done, who has a track record of doing so, and who loves their community.
Well, you certainly have all that going for you. What is your team doing in the final days leading up to the election, which is April 4th? What do you guys, when you talk to your volunteers, and what are you working on? You going after unions? You're going after organizations? You're just meeting people? Share some of the stuff.
Well, yeah, I'll share some awesome news. Like we've been endorsed by many folks, including recently Brandon Johnson. So not only am I getting out the vote for myself, but for the next mayor of Chicago. And also the Illinois Nurses Association. Both my parents were nurses. They came here from the Philippines to be nurses on the South Side, South Chicago Community Hospital. And One People's Campaign, Asian American Midwest Progressives, Victory Fund, and recently Maria Haddon came out for me, and she actually walked with me. In fact, we walked the border between the 49th and the 48th wards, which is really exciting. And we have more exciting endorsements to come. So that's one part of it, is just getting as many people to see that there is momentum behind this campaign, not only elected officials. And for instance, Lily Wachowski from the Matrix is a co-host of our next fundraising event. And not only like people who have name recognition, but also people from the community. So business owners have gotten behind me too. So that's really what it is. It's showing momentum, in window signs and in yard signs and people talking on the street. And every day I'm doing the work of getting in front of people at the train stations, on the sidewalks, at the doors, on the phones, to make sure that people are reminded to vote again, Michael, we must vote again.
Okay.
on April 4th.
Chicago, we can vote as many times as we want.
We have to vote again, and hopefully we'll change this one time. We will change this with ranked choice voting so that we don't have to spend all of our time and resources on another election. But really, this is what the work is. So we have a full plan with a fantastic team, including our campaign manager, our volunteer coordinator, our campaign coordinator, and everyone on social media, just spreading the word that it's time to vote again. And early voting starts next week. So if you have your mail-in ballot, you could prepare it. It's a very short ballot, Michael. So it's a very short ballot. So please do it, because it's really important to get out the vote and to let people who can't vote yet, Michael, know that elections are important. And even though they can't vote, I'm talking about young people who are not yet citizens here, or who can't get their citizenship here, to know that they are here and we see them, and we will be your vote. We are going to vote with our values and vote for people who can push and represent the people in this ward and make things better for everybody in the city of Chicago. We're going to vote for them, even though you're not old enough to vote. We're going to vote for you, even though you might have to change your voter address, which, by the way, you can do on election day. So please do that. We're going to vote for you. If you forget to vote, please don't forget to vote, though. I want everybody to try to make a plan to vote. That's what we're going to do. And it's going to be in every single precinct. We have 35 precincts in the 48th ward. And so we're asking every single person, if you are a person who votes, bring 5 friends and tell those 5 friends to vote, and tell those 5 friends to vote, and tell those 5 friends to vote. Because you know, Michael, how it works. Democracy is better when we are involved and engaged and informed. And also we get behind the candidates that best represents us. And that's it. Yes.
You're doing great. You have a new state rep over that way too, right? Hone, is that his name? Or how do you?
Han Nguyen, yeah. Han Nguyen is the state rep in the 13th district, which Indivisible IL9 helped elect. And
yeah, we had him on the show way back when he was running. And I'm just, I know that district is overlapped. So I just thought I'd bring that up, and hopefully he'll be out there for you too.
Yeah, Hanwin is great. And also he's a model of what it takes to win elections.
Yeah, he really did it.
Yes, he really did it. He did it with his feet, and he did it with his words, and he did it with his heart, and he did it with working one-on-one with people, letting them know that he's running, because that's really the first part, is to let people know who you are, and to make sure that they get out to vote after that. So please, if you know of anybody, Michael, in the 48th ward,
Don't worry, I'm going
know.
to tell them all. I'm twisting arms, and it's not very hard. You're pretty popular, I got to say.
Thanks, Michael.
You
Well,
got
I've been
any? You
yeah,
got
go
any
ahead.
big plans for? Let's assume you become the alderwoman. What is? What do you got? Any great ideas? I was playing around with an idea like you could lead outdoor tango classes every morning out in the parks.
I'm telling you, I am ready for that. I seriously am ready for that, because I think that, look, we're still living in pandemic times,
We are.
and people are traumatized. And I believe that art heals. And so bringing in creative ways to bring people together, to bring back humanity in our experiences, and that includes doing things in real time. This is great, Michael. I will have to say, like, being on Zoom is very convenient, and I can see you and I can hear you, but also there's nothing that replaces being right in front of a person.
I hear you.
Being heart to heart, and with an embrace together, and moving as one, two bodies, and four legs and one heart. That's what we want to do. We want to move together, and in a way that moves people forward, not back. We want to go forward.
Well, we hope you dance to victory, sister. And we wish you a lot of luck. And we're going to spread this video as far as we can, as locally as we can. And we're going to look forward to talking to you when you're in the council, and give us a little clues how the new progressive majority might be shaping up.
Thank you, Michael. I can't wait for that day. Thank you so much for all that you do, for being the local voice for all of us.
All right, sister, we'll see you. And everybody, we're going to take a short musical break, and we'll be right back with a closeout of Live from the Heartland. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial.
We need some time to talk with you. It's not the time for easy lies about the things we all must do, and it's no time for alibis, people crying and thinking about the revolution, wondering if there's time. The students lie on grassy fields, the bloodstained flowers shiver now. They're crucified on warrior shields and offered to a sacred cow. People dying and thinking about the revolution, wondering if there's time. Seems like when we were only children in the sandlot, in the schoolyard, in the morning sun, we didn't have any time to worry over tear gas.
Take it away. Okay, we're back with Live from the Heartland. We're going to finish up here with a few announcements, a little bit of information. This has been our show for March 18th. We recorded it on the 15th, and you can get it on youtube.com/Heartland Media. You can get it at Google and Spotify podcasts. We're on air and streamed on Saturday mornings on WLUW 88.7, and we're on CAN TV on Thursday nights at 9 o'clock. One sad thing that I need to mention is that Richie Marks, who was involved with the band Yama and the Karma Dusters back in Rogers Park, way back in the old days, and we're talking the early 70s. Al Goldberg reported that Richie passed away. He was living out in Colorado. He was quite a guy. There's a lot of stories. And you can still get the Yama and the Karma Dusters album. I think it sells a lot in Japan, and they were a great band and great asset to the neighborhood back in the day. I want to thank our guest today, Leni Manaa-Hoppenworth, and we also had from the Brandon campaign, Amisha Patel. We also had Thom Clark popping in for a little bit, so that was all good. I want to encourage you all to do what Athletes United for Peace do, and that's to do sports, not war. Want to thank the people who make the show possible. That would be Katie Hogan, Thom Clark, Lynn Orman, and Hal James. I also want to encourage you to watch or listen to, our sister shows, which would be Hitting Left, the Klonsky Brothers or Mike Klonsky on Lumpin' Radio, as well as Thorn Dreyer with the Rag Blog and the Rag Show out of Austin, Texas. And, I just point that out because there are a bunch of older radicals doing good things still. And I'm going to point out that John Melrod is coming on the show with his book, Fighting Times, Organizing on the Front Lines of the Class War. That will be, I believe, April 8th. We got a lot to do. We've got to go vote. Coming up on April 4th, you can start voting on March 20th. You can help out up in Wisconsin in that Supreme Court race. There's a lot you can do to contribute to the world, to the society, to your own neighborhood. So, do good in the world. The world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. See you soon. Have a great week.
Are you doing the best you can? Over the mountain, under the big blue sky, you got a dream awaiting. I can see it in your eye. It may not come easy, but you know you've got a friend. I'll be by your side the entire ride. Just let me hear you say amen. Are you doing? Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing? Are you doing the best you can? Tout donne, est-ce que tu donnes le meilleur de toi-même parce que tu l'aimes? Tu donnes, est-ce que tu donnes le meilleur de toi-même si tu l'aimes? Tu donnes, est-ce que tu donnes le meilleur de toi-même quand tu l'aimes? Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing?